This past weekend, Alex Garland released his latest feature, Warfare, so it's time to rank all 5 of his movies from my least favorite to my favorite. Welcome Cinema, where we focus on a film. I'm Jess, this is Simply Cinema. Let me know down in the comments below how many of Alex Garland's films have you seen, and how would you rank them all from your least favorite to your favorite? What do you think of him as a director as a whole? Of course, this is not the right list, this is my list, and be respectful of everyone else's opinions down in the comments below. And going in last place, we have Annihilation. Now, as a sci-fi fan, this is something deeply integrating to the nature of the cinematography, the atmosphere that really builds upon an ambience that Natalie Portman as the lead just does a fantastic job going into the mystery that really builds upon many different elements that bleed throughout this narrative as a whole, that makes it really enticing, really intriguing once you're really into the story. It's a slower paced film that can draw it back a little bit, but that's where there's still an element of building up the mystery with pacing that really builds upon what it ultimately tries to do with its thematic elements, that while it's sort of drawn back by certain moments that just don't necessarily have as big of an impact, it can be drawn out to a point of almost being boring to some retrospect. At the same time, it's still an atmosphere that is superficial to the nature of what it's ultimately trying to speak on, for the way they build upon the characters, the way they build upon the questions and how they resolve those questions, the answers they provide, is certainly satisfying to the nature of what the film is offering as a whole, which Alex Garland is just really doing a fantastic job with the nature of what he does from the get-go, building upon all the ambience of the cinematography. And going in number 4, we have Warfare. Now, this one could certainly go up upon rewatch or rethinking what I'm ultimately looking into this film for, but right now in the present moment, it's sort of a documentary film hybrid that goes and crosses between reality and fiction, in the retrospect that it's not necessarily a film that is a documentary, and it's definitely not fictionalized, because it's all based on the memories of these soldiers going on this failed mission, that it almost ends up with a pointless meaning behind the whole idea. And that's what is great about it. But also a downside is it feels so fresh and so new, it's hard to know what to think about it. Besides the aspects that I absolutely love, it's drawn out in a way that's really done well, and the sound is a huge, momentous part of it. The way it sucks you in, a plane flying overhead, just blasting the sound, that just even in a regular theater that I went to, just did so much volumes to the nature of what it is speaking on with these characters. And it just has a great cast. We have Will Porter and just others that really suck in the atmosphere as a whole, that almost anyone could technically play those roles, but they perform it well. And the direction of this film as a whole, the movement of the characters, the movement of the camera with those characters, and the landscape of the setting as a whole gets you lost at times. But even in a place where there's a dust storm covering up most everything, or they lay out a gas bomb that you can't really see everything in the clear sense because of the situation at hand and trying to hide from the enemies, it's still something where you can see them visibly. It's not foggy to the point where you're completely lost on who's who, what's all going on, and you feel for these characters, especially because they end up being an element of empathy with the nature of this being based on a true story, based on true enemies, true memories, that really sucks you in to the battle at hand, to the nature of everything. It's really down to earth in some ways, where they have a few scenes at the beginning where it's just these guys goofing off, watching this music dance video, or this other thing where they're just scouting out the area. It's really slow in those moments, but it's perfect for the nature of what it's ultimately also trying to do for how it tackles the themes as a whole. And at number three, we have Men. Certainly one of his weirdest of his filmography, just in the way they sort of build upon this mystery, this isolated area type of deal, where weird elements are used for the sake of being weird. There's certain things that are hard to interpret, certain elements where, as an A24 film, it's very fitting for the studio to release under Alex Garland. And of course, the atmosphere, certain things with how he utilizes the filmmaking is the most tame compared to his other films, but that doesn't speak upon what the cinematography still does for this film, being very green with other things, being very weird in the nature of this girl that's going upon this, trying to isolate herself, trying to recover herself, and you're finding more about her relationship, what she has gone through, why she is going on this resort by her own, and what that ultimately becomes uncomfortable for the nature of the situation, having questions but not being too weird in what all is going on, except this outsider type of thing that's coming upon her walk that does so much different things in a nature that you can't necessarily describe why everything is happening in the way it is, with this naked man, this other thing that flows on throughout within the narrative that is at hand, and that leads into an ending that is really, really odd to the nature of this birthing section, if you will. If you haven't seen it, I'm not going to spoil it, but that's all I can really speak on to what it's all in all about. That just, it sucks me into the sake of weirdness that is certainly something that I can be transformed by in the nature of absorbing all the weirdness that it has to offer. And at number two, we got Civil War. Now, this is a down to earth, gritty, sort of war baron type of film that Alex Garland just tackles this story about this war photographer and this wannabe war photographer that tries to follow Kristen Stewart, Kirsten Dunst, for her role that she's putting on in this, that is just really done quite well. The nature of all these other characters following along and having these other moments, Jesse Plemons giving one of his most disturbing scenes within the movie that does so much and feels so much transformic to the nature of what can be done at America at the time. Just America fighting against each other, the questions these soldiers have about who they're fighting, and yet they're fighting just for the sake of being fought back. And so there's not necessarily clear answers that make sense to the nature of why war is against war, but that also can be in a reality that is most scary, is America fighting against each other in a civil war, and the nature of how that blends in with this road trip type adventure that also goes into this war film, has some of the most brutal scenes that I absolutely love to hate in the nature of what it is doing thematically, what it is speaking on to the audience, to the nature of how you're bleeding into these characters that don't necessarily stand out fully, but they still do so much in the nature of what you're tracking along with the story, how the camera is following everything as a whole, and tackling that all into the lead up to the president and what all that means for the sake of the story, just does so much to the nature of what this film has to speak on as a whole. But my number one favorite film from director Alex Garland is Ex Machina. Now, this is a sci-fi film that goes into this element of AI, creating these robots, this secluded environment that makes it that much more isolated, claustrophobic, and tense for the nature of the situation. This scientist and this winner of this contest that gets to visit the scientists, explore this environment, what we're getting out of performances Oscar Isaac as a scientist, and Domino Gleason, and just how that all blends in together, the way everything just works as a whole, thematically, and a love interest that's very different for a romance film for sure, and different betrayals, the different thematic ideas to what you're discovering about this robot, the questions of morality, and if robots have feelings, if how that all works out, just inner work something strong and emotional to the sense of the gravitas to the situation, the utilization of the cameras, the lighting, the color usage is just prolific to the nature of what he can capture with this film, especially as his very first film, speaks volumes to the nature of how he utilizes the sound, the nature of the story, how it sucks you into the environment, just so strongly moving in every fashion that you utilize all these different elements of sci-fi while also adding in these small little genre blend of these drama, this romance, and just doing all that together, taking you into different directions and giving you a little bit of a twist and turn along the way, still sucks you into the basic elements to what this film has to offer as a whole, for being some of the more basic narrative beats to what Alex Garland has to offer for his filmography. So that's just my ranking of all 5 Alex Garland films from my least favorite to my favorite. Let me know down in the comments below how you would rank Alex Garland's films from your least favorite to your favorite, and I'd love to see what you have, how our filmography rankings differ, and how they kind of go along together in the same way. We all have different thoughts, so be respectful in the comments below, and make sure to like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe if you haven't already to join in Film Culture community, where we talk about the love of cinema as a whole. So that's just all, and make sure to do yourself a favor and go watch a movie.